Hello, guys. I've made a very big mistake. I don't even know where the mistakes began or when I started to become so stupid and lustful. I've destroyed my once happy marriage because of my lustful desires. I don't even know how I got here. Everything right now is on the verge of being lost. Everything happened so fast it was like a flash, and I'm so ashamed of myself right now. I've done something so despicable. I can't even look myself in the mirror right now, and I don't think I will ever be able to forgive myself for having an affair and cheating on my husband. I blame myself for everything. I got so carried away by my lust that I couldn't even control myself. I'm so confused and lost, but I hope by posting here someone might learn something. I have ruined my marriage with my own hands, all just because of some fun with a younger person. My kids won't even talk or look at me, and the same with every other member of my family. My husband doesn't want me anymore and is saying he wants a divorce. I know you must be wondering about what happened, so first my backstory. My name is Fiona, and I am a 45-year-old woman. My husband, Victor, is a 47-year-old man. We have been married for 25 years, and we live in Alabama in the United States of America. We have 3 kids, Ariel and Arthur, who are twins and are 23 years old, and Skylar, who is male and 19 years old. My husband and I were high school sweethearts and got married a few years after we were both done with high school. My husband was the star quarterback back then in school, LOL, and I was the nerd that was constantly getting bullied. That all stopped when he started protecting, and throughout my last years in high school, I never got bullied again. High school was rough. I was the geek, always a target for bullies. Victor was the big shot quarterback everyone loved. It honestly felt like he belonged to a different universe. Then, out of the blue one day, lol, we bumped into each other in the hallway, and things took a surprising turn. Victor, against all odds, started hanging out with me. It felt like something out of a teen movie, LOL. He saw beyond the labels and actually liked me for me. As we spent time together, he became my shield, standing up to the bullies who had been making my life a misery. With Victor around, the bullying stopped. His presence was like a force that made those jerks back off. I couldn't believe the star quarterback was choosing to be with me, just a regular girl trying to get by. Victor not only had my back, but showed me a world where kindness mattered more than cruelty. In his company, I found an unexpected ally and friend, and then a husband, LOL. I remember our first date. I was all jittery, waiting for Victor to show up for our first high school date. I was 16 and he was soon to be 18 and done with high school. The vibe was like a mix of excitement and nerves. When he finally came, he had this cute, shy smile that just made me feel good. We kicked off our date with a chill walk in the park, where we chatted and shared our embarrassing and hilarious secrets. Victor genuinely cared about what I had to say. He made me feel important. We sat on a bench, snacking on popcorn, and watched the sunset. It felt like the start of something real special. That first high school date turned into a memory I'll never forget. On our second high school date, Victor surprised me with this cool 2-seater bike, a fun ride that had us pedaling around town, laughing like crazy people. After our biking adventure, Victor suggested a picnic. We found a nice spot in the park, laid out a blanket, and chowed down on homemade sandwiches and snacks. It was just us, enjoying good food and the simple pleasure of being carefree teenagers. Sitting there munching away, I couldn't help but appreciate how thoughtful Victor was. Our second date was all about having a good time together, creating another awesome memory in our high school days. On our third high school date, Victor took me to this awesome secret spot of his, a place he really loved. We wandered off into quiet trails, away from all the school, hustle, bustle, and chaos, until we stumbled upon his little hideaway. Surrounded by nature, it felt like our own peaceful escape. Victor shared why this spot meant so much to him, making it seem like our personal little haven. Chilling in his favorite hideout, I could see how much Victor trusted me, opening up about his special place. In our early 20s, with Victor at 22 and me at 20, we decided to get married. In fact, we were knee-deep in planning our marriage. College costs were like a constant weight on our wallets. Victor was grinding through medical studies as he wanted to become a medical surgeon, and I was chasing an art degree to fuel my passion. Dreams were big, but money was tight. We'd sit down, crunching numbers and trying to figure out how to have a wedding without going broke. Nights were spent talking about our future, balancing our studies with the reality of becoming a married couple. It wasn't easy on our wallets, but our youthful hope and shared determination turned those challenges into building blocks. On our big day, Victor and I found ourselves in this cute little church, surrounded by familiar faces of close friends and family. The vibe was a mix of excitement and nerves, lol, making it clear that what we were doing was a pretty big deal. Walking down the aisle, emotions hit me like a truck. The simple setting of the church didn't take away from the fact that this moment was huge. It just made everything feel real and genuine. The church, with its modest decorations, perfectly matched the essence of our love, straightforward but deep. With our favorite people around, you could feel the joy and support in the air. Yeah, nerves were there too, like a bunch of butterflies having a party in my stomach. Totally normal given the promises we were about to make. Standing up there with Victor, looking into his eyes, I felt at ease. Our vows were simple, but you could tell they came from the heart, a testament to the love that had grown from high school days to this life-changing moment. The party afterward was a blast. Lots of toasts, laughter, and good times with the folks who've been with us through it all. Our wedding day might not have been some grand affair, but it was rich in real emotions. Years later, and we were at such good places, we graduated, and Victor is now a very successful medical surgeon. Too successful, I'd say. He always has to be on call and available regardless of the day and time. That has been affecting our relationship as he doesn't even have time for me anymore. As for me, even though I got my art degree, I never really used it, as I chose to be a stay-at-home mom, SAHM. I chose to stay home and take care of the kids while Victor went out and worked. Besides, after Victor's dad died, he left Victor a sizable inheritance, so we weren't struggling at all. Financially, we were in a very good place. Victor had everything set up. In case he did retire, so we wouldn't go broke or anything, he didn't even need to work, but he still kept working, because the hospital needed him and he loved his job. He also made sure a trust fund and college fund was set up for all our kids, so all in all, we're in a very good place. Emotionally, though, it had been a while since Victor and I had a time to ourselves or were even intimate. Our marriage life was suffering as he didn't have any time for me. I guess I should have just talked to him, but I was so desperate for any atom of affection that I went ahead and cheated. I met Charles at the grocery store. Yes, a grocery store. I was done shopping for provisions and was on my way to checkout when I bumped into him, LOL, like the way I had bumped into my husband back then in high school. Charles was young. He looked like he was only a few years older than my eldest kids, Ariel and Arthur, and he was very handsome. He apologized to me and offered to help me carry my stuff to checkout and then to my car, but I refused. Again, he offered to help pay for my stuff, but I refused since he hadn't caused me or the stuff I bought any harm by bumping into him. I then checked out and left, but he kept following me. He told me his name was Charles, and I introduced myself. It was obvious he was trying to flirt with me, so I told him my age and that I was way older than him. He told me that he didn't mind as I was beautiful. Now I know that I am beautiful, and I get complimented a lot about it. Also, people sometimes tell me that I look a lot younger than I actually am, which is understandable since I take good care of my skin and work out to keep in shape. But just hearing it from someone as young as Charles made me feel happy. Also, because of the emotional distance between me and my husband as a result of his work, I was feeling emotionally staffed for attention. I smiled and thanked him, but still I told him I was married. Charles told me that he didn't mind as he just wanted to be friends. Inwardly, I knew that was a lie, and I should have just left then and there, but I honestly don't know what stupid and idiotic thought and mistake that made me stay and give Charles my number. Before I even got home, he had already started texting me. Soon, Charles and I were texting regularly. I guess I did it because I was feeling so lonely. The kids weren't around as Ariel and Arthur were in college. Skylar was also in college as he graduated from high school early. Did I mention that the kids were big fans of their dad? They were all pursuing the medical field in college. They had taken their dad's brains LL and didn't take my creative side. Ariel was studying to become a nurse, while Arthur and Skylar were both studying to become medical surgeons. As a result of that, I was left alone at the house a lot, and that made me really lonely. Charles and I were texting a lot, and we were also flirting. I guess I should have felt guilty then, but I didn't because I felt it was harmless flirting, and what Victor didn't know would never hurt him. Charles and I did not have a lot in common. He was not an art person, but was more of a music person. Unlike me, he also did not like the kind of movies I liked, but that just drew us closer. I also found out Charles was only 24 years old, only a year older than Ariel and Arthur. I felt guilty, but still stupidly I carried on. Charles was hell-bent on making me see things his way, lol. He said that if I watched some of the movies that he liked, I would like them too. He was also empathetic and would listen to me rant and talk endlessly. Now that I think about it, Charles was a walking red flag, but I was so starved for attention that I didn't even care to look further at the kind of person he was. Charles put on a facade. At first he made me trust him, but then when trouble came, he abandoned me. Charles was charismatic, and so it was easy for him to pretend that he cared about me. Soon I was smiling and laughing more to the extent that my friends, and even my kids and Victor noticed. But whenever they asked, I lied and told them I just wanted to appreciate life more. No. Charles had a way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the world to him. He honestly knew how to get under a person's skin and into their heart. Soon I was inviting Charles to the house when Victor was away to watch movies with me, and then we would try to convince each other that our movie taste was superior to the others. I knew that what I was doing was wrong, but I honestly paid no mind to it. I inwardly tried convincing myself a lot of the time that I was doing nothing with Charles, even though I knew that it would eventually lead to something. On one faithful day, Charles came over while Victor was away. Victor had previously told me that he wouldn't be coming back that night, so Charles and I had both decided that we would have a movie marathon all night long, and then Charles would leave really early in the morning before Victor would be back. Charles came over, and soon we were on Netflix watching a few movies. I honestly do not know how it happened, and I cannot even explain how it happened. It all happened quickly and in a flash, but soon Charles kissed me and I responded, and we got intimate. It was only until the next day. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning, and Victor wasn't back, but I knew he would be back by 7 or 8. I finally realized what I had done, and I hurriedly kicked Charles out before Victor would come back. I was horrified by the fact that I had cheated on my husband. What would Victor say? What would Victor do? All those questions kept running around in my mind. I felt so guilty, but I also felt horrified because I had enjoyed it. I was so emotionally starved that I had cheated on my husband with a young boy that was only a year older than my twins. And when my husband came back from the hospital, I felt so guilty, but I couldn't tell him because I knew he would divorce me and leave me. I didn't want that. I love my husband, and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. My husband was kind, humble, and helpful, but he did not like cheating at all. My husband was the kind of person that believed in communication. He believes if you have any issues, talk it out with your partner instead of going out and cheating. I pretended as if everything was fine, and as if I didn't just cheat on my husband a few hours ago. We chatted and talked, and then Victor went to rest because he had been working all night. I blocked Charles after sending him a quick message to never message me again, and all was well for a few days. After I had blocked Charles, he called me for a few times with some numbers before finally letting me be. I was starting to feel lonely, and I realized that Charles was the only person that made me not feel bored. He entertained me. I am also ashamed to admit it, but I missed the intimacy. So after wrestling with my inner mind for a few days, I finally unblocked Charles. He soon sent me a quick text, and soon we were talking again. Charles convinced me that what Victor didn't know wouldn't kill him, and as long as he never found out about the affair, we would be safe. Charles assured me that it would be easy to hide the affair because Victor worked a lot and was usually working on weekends. And also my kids were in college, so it was just me in the house. Charles convinced me that I wasn't doing much wrong by cheating on Victor because it was Victor's fault for neglecting me. Like a person without a mind of their own, I fell for Charles's words, and soon Charles and I were having our secret affair in the house. Whenever Victor was away at the hospital for weekends, Charles would come over and spend a lot of time. We would also be intimate a lot. Charles also convinced me to start giving him money. Victor and I had a joint account, even though Victor was the one earning all the money. And also because we were well off, I started giving Charles money for stuff, like gas, groceries, clothes, and other stuff. I became so engrossed in the affair and so involved that I think I lost myself. I guess Victor must have started to suspect because he started coming home randomly a lot of times. That should have been a wake-up call for me, but I still ignored it at this point. I was so deep in with Charles that I just couldn't stop. One day, I and Charles were in the middle of being intimate. When I heard Victor's car pull up to the driveway, I was so shocked because he wasn't supposed to be home by this time. I immediately dragged Charles off me and hurriedly got dressed and arranged the bed. I had to hide Charles in one of our kids' rooms, since our kids had gone off to college. Their rooms were mostly unused nowadays. It still had all their stuff from childhood, though, and they usually stayed in the rooms whenever they came to visit, so I always kept it clean. Thankfully, Victor didn't even think to check the kids' room, and I guess he didn't want me to know he was suspecting me, so he acted Norma and stayed home all throughout the day. Charles couldn't leave and had to spend the night in the kids' room. The next day, however, when Victor had left to go to work, Charles then came out. Since he had spent the night there, he hadn't really eaten much, so I let him bathe and eat breakfast with me. Then we started getting intimate. That was where I made such a huge mistake, you see. I should have just sent Charles home after having breakfast with him instead of getting intimate with him again. I guess Victor must have really suspected me because he came right back to the house and caught me and Charles right in the act of getting intimate. Have you ever seen your life flash right before your eyes? That is what happened to me the moment Victor dashed into our matrimonial bed and caught me and Charles together intimate. I immediately, on an impulse, hurriedly covered myself with the bedsheets and then started crying. Charles' clothes were on the floor, so Victor grabbed them and refused to give them to him, and then kicked Charles out naked. I just watched everything unfold, realizing that I had ruined my life. Victor didn't even scream at me, and I guess that was what horrified me the most. I wanted him to have a reaction, to say anything to me, to scream at me, to ask me how could I. I just wanted him to have a reaction, but he did not. He threw Charles' clothes in the trash and then left the house, even though I kept calling him to come back to let me explain. I cried for hours on end. What had I done? I had ruined my life, and there was no going back from here. My life was gone. My marriage that I have struggled so hard to build was gone. I knew that there was no way Victor would forgive me. I had scarred him for life. Victor was going to leave me, and I knew that I would go down. I had no source of income on my own, no assets. Suddenly, I regretted the decision I made to be a stay-at-home wife all those years. Victor didn't even waste time in broadcasting what I had done. I was even more horrified by the way he had told everyone about my betrayal and cheating. I got a notification on my phone that Victor had added me to a group chat on WhatsApp with my family, our friends, and his family. It was as if I had a premonition of what he was about to do. I tried calling him hurriedly, but he refused to pick up. Then he posted screenshot of my messages with Charles, and then did a voice note about how he had come into the house and caught me and Charles in the act. My phone started buzzing. Everyone was blowing up my phone. I was getting text messages about how I could have done something so horrible and about how I had ruined my marriage. My parents were so disappointed, my friends were disappointed and shocked, and Victor's family was enraged. I guess Victor didn't want our kids to find out by someone else telling them, so he called them and told them. I only know that because soon after my kids were calling me. At first, I was too scared to pick, but I knew my kids. If I didn't pick, they would come over to the house, and facing them in person would be even more horrifying than talking to them on the phone. So I picked up the phone. My kids were so shocked, they were so disappointed in me. I tried to give them an excuse. I tried to tell them about how I was so lonely, and that's why I did it, but they weren't hearing it. They told me why I haven't talked to them. They told me that Victor had been planning to retire soon, and that he would have all the time in the world. Safe to say I had ruined my life. My kids didn't want to talk to me anymore. My family, and even Victor's family, were enraged at what I had done, as they thought Victor and I were happy together. I tried calling Victor multiple times, but he wouldn't pick up, so I sent him a lot of texts, explaining why I did it, apologizing, and telling him I had felt so lonely, but Victor would hear none of it. He told me he knew how lonely I was, and that he had been planning to retire. But he hadn't told me because he had wanted it to be a little surprise. I couldn't believe my ears. He also told me that he had been suspecting that I had been cheating on him, and that was why he started coming home randomly. He told me he gave me only a few days to pack my stuff and leave his house, and that he would come to give me divorce papers to sign. I had to pack up and go to my parents' house because even though they were very angry at me, they would never abandon me in my time of need. As for Charles, he blocked me, and I cannot even reach him. It is as if he never existed in the first place. I know what I did was wrong, and I am regretting it. I will continue to regret it for the rest of my life. But I am hoping that by posting here, someone might see this and learn a lesson from my mistake. Thank you all for listening. I am currently regretting every decision I've ever made. Hello, Redditors. I've always been a huge fan of this platform, and now that everything in my life is crumbling, I feel like it is suitable to share my situation here. I am hoping that by speaking up and sharing my story, some of y'all might avoid making the same marriage-scattering mistake I made. Temptation is something we should all avoid. For a few minutes of fun, I've ruined my marriage that took years to build, and I've lost every sense of stability. I cheated on my husband with a younger student of mine at the college where I lecture. This singular mistake of mine has currently torn apart my entire life. I know you're probably wondering about what happened and how it happened. So let me give you my backstory first. My name is Serena, and I am a 45-year-old woman. My husband, Mike, is a 46-year-old man, and we've been married for 23 years. We have 2 wonderful kids, Damien and Resend. Damien is 21 and Resend is 19. They're both currently away at college. Mike and I met at college. Mike and I first crossed paths in the hustle and bustle of the university library. You know, that place where the air is thick with the smell of old books and dreams of the future. I was knee-deep in my love affair with literature, lost in the magic of words sprawled across pages. Mike, this curious guy with a spark in his eye, noticed me engrossed in my reading. Our initial interactions were more like quiet smiles and shared glances amidst the sea of books. Slowly but surely, our late-night coffee breaks turned into conversations, and those stolen glances during lectures became the highlight of my day. Lowell, when I started college, I was all about being super serious. You know, no time for romance, just books and lectures. That was the plan. But then along came Mike, this dude who practically radiated happiness. Always smiling, super kind, the whole package. At first I resisted it. I was like, nope, staying focused here. But Mike was relentless. His laughter could turn the most me day into something special. He had this way of making life feel lighter, like he held the secret to enjoying every little moment. Mike seemed to have cracked the code of perpetual happiness. Always with that infectious smile, he had this gentle and kind aura that melted away my well-intentioned walls. In the beginning, I fought against it, reminding myself of my initial pact with academia. I tried to stick to my no love, just study rule, but Mike's easygoing vibe and genuine joy started breaking down my defenses. It was like he had this magical power to turn seriousness into laughter and make every day a bit brighter. Mike was like a persistent ray of sunlight. He warmed his way into my heart. His laughter was contagious, capable of turning the gloomiest day into a joyous adventure. Gradually, I found myself drawn to his easygoing nature and the simple joy he found in every moment. It was as if he held the key to a world where seriousness was replaced by laughter and warmth. So, despite my best efforts, love crept in, and suddenly, my heart wasn't following the academic script I had planned, the strict study-only policy I had set for it. Mike's charm flipped my college journey into an unexpected adventure of laughter and warmth. Love happened, and it was a surprise that made those study-only intentions fly right out the window. Against my initial resolve, I started to see the beauty in letting someone in. Our first date wasn't your usual fancy dinner or movie night. Mike decided we should have a spontaneous picnic in the park at sunset. It might sound cliché, but trust me, Mike had a talent for making the ordinary super special. We walked through the park, carrying blankets and a basket filled with all sorts of snacks. Mike's excitement rubbed off on me, and I couldn't help but get into the spirit. We found a spot under a big oak tree that seemed just right. What made the picnic awesome was the surprise element. Instead of regular sandwiches, Mike brought out a mix of international snacks: Thai noodles, French pastries, and some weird fruit I couldn't pronounce. It was like a mini world tour for our taste buds, right there on the blanket. As we munched on the goodies, Mikey told hilarious stories that had us both cracking up. He had this knack for turning everyday stuff into something funny. Time seemed to stand still, just us, the sound of leaves and distant city noise. Then we had an unexpected dance party with just Mike and I in attendance, LOL. Mike pulled out a tiny speaker, and a sweet tune started playing. He grinned and, like a pro, asked me to dance. We twirled around under the stars, laughing and having a blast. It felt like a scene from a feel-good movie. But wait, there was more. Mike handed me a small, fancy-looking package. I opened it to find a glow-in-the-dark frisbee. He remembered me mentioning how I liked playing frisbee in the evenings. The fact that he remembered and turned it into a surprise was just so sweet. We ended up throwing the frisbee in the semi-darkness, missing catches and laughing like crazy. We didn't care if we looked silly. It was about enjoying the moment together. I remember thinking, this is the kind of date you remember forever. As the night wound down, we lay on the blanket, staring at the stars. Mike shared his dreams, and I shared mine. It was a level of honesty and connection that felt real. Our first date wasn't just fun. It was a sneak peek into the kind of relationship where you can be yourself. I went home that night with a heart full of laughter, a glow-in-the-dark frisbee, and this feeling that I'd just had a seriously amazing time. Mike had this way of turning a regular evening into an unforgettable adventure, and remember feeling that this was the kind of person I'd want to spend the rest of my life with. Deciding to tie the knot before completing college was a wild move, but for Mike and me, it felt like the right kind of crazy. Mike's parents, though well off, were surprisingly laid back and adored me. On the flip side, my family couldn't get enough of Mike. So, despite the unconventional timing, we took the plunge into marriage. The decision to get married wasn't about throwing a grand affair. We opted for a small church ceremony with only a handful of people invited. It raised a few eyebrows considering Mike's wealthy background, but what folks didn't know was that it was exactly what I wanted. Something private and intimate. Walking down the aisle in that small church, the air felt charged with excitement and a bit of disbelief. The intimate setting surrounded by our closest loved ones made it feel like it was just us, promising forever. Mike's parents, the coolest, most easygoing people ever lol, cheered us on, while my family beamed with joy. Our vows were exchanged in a space filled with love and support, far away from the grandeur one might expect from a family with Mike's financial standing. The choice for a more modest celebration wasn't about avoiding extravagance. It was about authenticity, about the simplicity of our commitment to each other. The reception that followed was a cozy gathering filled with laughter, shared stories, and heartfelt toasts. It wasn't the opulent affair one might associate with a wealthy family, but it was perfect for us. We danced, laughed, and celebrated the start of our journey together, surrounded by the warmth of our closest friends and family. Our decision to marry before finishing college might have seemed impulsive to some, but for us, it was a declaration of love and commitment that defied societal expectations. Love knows no perfect timing. Also, looking back, our small wedding in that quiet church remains a cherished memory. It wasn't about the size of the guest list or the extravagance of the event. It was about two people choosing each other, surrounded by the love of those who mattered most. And in that simplicity, we found the foundation for our love story. You know, they say you never know what you have till it's gone. I never knew how precious and important Mike was to me until I lost him all because of some fun. The transition from college to whatever came after was another whole chapter for Mike and me. Graduation was looming, and we were headed in different directions, driven by our unique dreams. For me, teaching was the goal. It wasn't just a job, it was a passion. I wanted to be in a classroom, helping students grow. Mike, on the other hand, had a more laid-back approach to college. He was set to inherit the family business and become the big-shot CEO LOL, and he also had a trust fund waiting for him. College, for him, was more about the experience, the parties, the friendships, and the whole shebang. Our talks about life after college highlighted the gap between our plans. I was all about education, wanting to make a difference in the lives of students. Mike, on the flip side, was cool with life unfolding naturally, knowing his future was somewhat set. The contrast in our college experiences and post-graduation plans didn't mess with the bond we built during those years. Moving from college to the real world brought a mix of excitement and nerves. I went job hunting, hoping to find my place in the education scene. Meanwhile, Mike smoothly transitioned into the CEO role, handling the business world like a pro. Our post-college journeys took us in different directions, but our connection stayed strong. Living together as a married couple, we supported each other through the highs and lows. I found my groove in teaching, while Mike tackled the complexities of running a business. And a bunch of years passed since Mike and I left college. I was now a successful professor teaching at a college that I cannot name due to privacy, and Mike was CEO of his family's business. Our kids were also off in another state, tackling their own college adventures, lol. And you know what? Life, despite all the success, started having this nagging feeling of routine, the everyday grind, the comfortable rhythm of our marriage. It started to feel like a broken record. With the kids off doing their thing, I was always bored, wondering what came next. All the wins and achievements that should have made me feel on top of the world weren't shielding me from the creeping boredom. The excitement we had in the early days has mellowed into a kinda peaceful but dull routine. Mike's CEO life kept him busy, dealing with board meetings and business trips, and sometimes it felt like we were in different worlds. And then there was also the fear of getting old. The little signs like a wrinkle here and a gray hair there made me realize we were not the college kids anymore. Life had thrown us responsibilities, and it was messing with who I thought I was. It's not that I'm unhappy with Mike or the life we built. It's just this itch for more. Personal growth, rediscovering what makes me tick. The success that defined us seems to have dimmed the spark that kicked off our journey together. Years roll by, I'm still just there doing some soul searching. I was respected and successful, but still, yet I felt so bored. Our life, the careers, the pride in our kids, all awesome stuff. But the itch for something more won't shut up. It started pushing me to shake things up, to find a new groove. It was at a point where I needed to talk to Mike, to understand each other, and maybe take on new adventures, together or on our own. A chance to rediscover and renew ourselves. But I never talked to Mike. That was where I was stupid. Mike was the most understanding person I knew. If only I had talked to him, he would have listened. He would have tried, he would have fought for us, but I didn't talk to him. I left everything inside me and pretended as if I was fine. And as if to destroy everything I had built in years, the devil Lowell sent a person named Jake. Jake was the biggest mistake I made. Let me tell you about Jake. He was 20 years old and he was a student in some of my classes. I say was because even though I haven't been called in by the board to explain myself, I'm pretty sure that I am losing my job over this mistake. Now, like I previously said, Jake was a student in some of my classes. He stood out because he was very good-looking and very charismatic. I noticed that a lot of the students liked Jake because he was funny and handsome and also smart. Jake was the kind of student that was in everyone's good books. Initially, I didn't notice him much or pay much attention to him, other than observing the fact that he was intelligent and also handsome. He also reminded me of my kids, as my kids were smart and also very good-looking. They were also very charismatic. And there was a running joke in the house that our kids could take down a monkey from a tree, lol. Either ways, I only started to notice Jake when he started interacting with me more. He would stay after lectures were over and ask if he could help me or something. He would ask to help me with the virtually anything I needed help with, be it grading another class's test or carrying some of my things to the car. He was generally very helpful, or at least that's how it seemed to me. Jake was a very manipulative person, but it wasn't something I really noticed then, as I was entranced by him. Soon Jake and I were talking more. We would have conversations and defend our points of views. For example, he believed that Socrates did not exist and that he must have just been a figment of Plato's imagination, while I, on the other hand, believed that Socrates must have existed, and just because there was no record of his existence apart from Plato's notes didn't mean he did not exist. It was obvious pretty quick that Jake wanted something more. That was the time where I should have shut him down. But I kept encouraging him, talking to him, having him help me and pretend as if I didn't know that he wanted more. Soon, Jake and I were hanging out more outside lecture hours, and soon we were getting intimate. He said he didn't care about my age and told me that I was beautiful, no matter how old I was. I was flattered and entranced by the fact that someone as handsome as Jake, who every girl in the campus had a crush on, actually liked me. We were soon getting intimate a lot in my office after lecture hours. I couldn't take Jake to my home because Mike had an irregular schedule. Even though he was always busy, you could never know when he would be free and at home. He could be in Italy for a business trip, and in a few hours' time, he would tell you that he was flying back home. Sometimes he wouldn't even tell you he was coming so as to surprise you. I was too scared and horrified by the prospect of Mike coming home and finding me and Jake together. Even more so, my kids had inherited Mike's habits of not informing anybody before coming home. So sometimes you would think that they were in school, and lo and behold, they would be on the next flight home without even telling anybody. I didn't want my kids coming home to surprise me and meeting me and Jake intimate, as that would probably scar them for life, so I resorted to my office and hotels. Jake and I mostly preferred my office as we could be intimate immediately after lectures had ended and everyone had left. I even started staying at work late and telling Mike I had to work overtime when he was at home just so I could spend time with Jake at the office. Honestly, during my whole time of doing this, I felt very guilty. I loved Mike a lot and couldn't imagine my life without him. But I also wanted some excitement in my life, and Jake could provide that excitement as he was young and active. Mike's business was very successful, but that also left us with little time for each other. I could barely remember the last time we had a whole day to each other. Mike planned on slowly retiring, though, when our oldest Damien was done with college and Mike could slowly pass the mantle of CEO onto him. There were times when I would sometimes have nightmares of Mike finding out and confronting me, or even coming to see me at the university and stumbling onto me and Jake intimate. I would dream about Mike screaming at me, asking me how I could cheat on him. To be honest, I should have taken those dreams seriously and maybe stopped cheating while I was still ahead and Mike was still in the dark, but I didn't, LOL. I even thought the dreams were only coming as a result of me being scared of Mike finding out. Well, on the day when it all blew up in my face, I was at the university. I had just finished up a lecture about an hour ago, and Jake and I were being intimate. Mike had already texted me that he would soon be home in a few hours, so I planned to finish up with Jake and then go back home in a few hours to meet Mike, as I had missed him. I noticed that my kids had given me a few missed calls. Damien had called me 5 times, and Reese had called me 7 times. But I didn't pay it too much mind. In the house, we had a rule that if it's very urgent, text about it. This was because sometimes we would be too busy to pick a call. But we could take a quick glance at our phone if it was a text. Also, Damien and Reese could call you a billion times for the smallest things. LOL. So texting just worked better. I planned to call them back when I was frightened later in the evening because I knew if it was a very huge emergency, one of them would have texted since. I soon finished up with Jake, dropped him off, and then headed home. I was so happy to see Mike. I didn't even pay attention to his countenance. I made us dinner, and then we sat down to watch a movie and discuss stuff. All of a sudden, Mike asked me if I had checked my Instagram and that he had tagged me on a post. I was a bit surprised, as Mike wasn't really an Instagram person, but sometimes or occasionally, he would tag me under funny posts or something he felt he wanted me to see, or he would save and send the post to me. I told Mike I would check the post later, but he insisted on it and said he wanted me to check it now, so I opened up my Instagram and went all the way to my notifications. I immediately noticed that Mike wasn't the only one that had tagged me. My kids had also tagged me, as I recognized their Instagram handles. My kids were something of Instagram influencers, and I followed them. I clicked on the post, and what I saw shocked me. It was a photo of me and Jake in a hotel room. It was obvious that we had just been intimate, and I looked as if I was sleeping in the photo. And even worse, Jake had been the one to post the photo. Not just that, in the caption, he had also bragged about being able to sleep with his lecturer, and the post was viral. I was shocked. I was horrified. I didn't even know what to do. It was as if time froze. Mike was staring at me, and it was obvious he had already seen the post. I noticed that my kids had also tagged him along with me on the post. Now I knew why my kids had been calling me. What would I tell everyone? The photo that Jake posted was so compromising that it was obvious what was going on, and I wouldn't even be able to lie about it. Mike had gotten up from the couch by now and was heading out. I tried to call out to him, but he stormed out. He was no longer calm and pretending as if everything was fine. I tried calling Mike after he left, but he wouldn't pick up. My kids also tried calling me again and even texted me. At that point, even my in-laws and family members had started calling me. It was as if everyone has stumbled on the post. I still tried reaching Mike, but all to no avail. But all I got back from him was a single text that by the time he came back in an hour or so, he wanted me out of the house. Now I've been married to Mike for a long time, and I know him like the back of my hand, so I knew that that was no empty threat. Mike was the kindest person that I knew, but when he got angry, he could do the craziest things. He never made empty threats, and if he promised to do something, he always went ahead with it no matter what. So I packed up just my clothes and essentials and left the house. I headed to my parents' house. And when I got there, I owned up to my mistake and told them what happened. They were angry, of course, but they couldn't abandon me in my time of need, so they took me in. As for my kids, it was as if the more I refused to pick their calls out of fear, the angrier they got. Soon, they had both sent me a text explaining that the thing with Jake was actually a game. Jake had been asked to pick a lecturer he would like to be intimate with, and he had chosen me. Jake had also boasted and told them to give him a few months, and that he would have me eating out of the palm of his hand soon enough. Of course, my kids hadn't experienced this firsthand as they were out of state for college, but they said that they had gotten this story from a very reliable person who was there at the party when Jake said it. I was so shocked to hear that, but suddenly it started to make sense. That was where all of a sudden Jake, who had never interacted much during lectures, apart from answering questions, when I asked, suddenly started helping me after lectures. I felt like a fool, and worse of all, I felt used. Mike still wasn't accepting my calls, so I decided to finally pick my kids' call. I couldn't tell them much as I didn't even have an excuse, so all I could do was apologize and cry. I begged them to help me, beg Mike. But they said that their dad was really hurt and that they weren't sure he would listen to anybody now. They felt so disappointed in me and said they felt so ashamed as a lot of people had tagged them under the post and a lot of people had recognized me. That is currently my situation now. I still haven't talked to my in-laws, but I know that they must be very disappointed in me. My parents are also very disappointed and saddened, and worst of all, my kids are shattered. The only communication that has gone on between Mike and me is him sending me a quick text, telling me that we would be getting a divorce. I feel shattered, I regret everything, and if I could go back in time, I would definitely do everything different. I'm posting this here, hoping that someone doesn't make the same mistake that I did. Thanks for listening.